received instruction from the ancient world. The instruction has gone through many different phases, but today the world is running based on ancient instruction. Recently we've added things, we've manipulated things, we've changed the details, but the basic structure of society and the underpinnings of what create the culture has remained fairly constant. And so this is an ancient world that we're trying to understand and to relate to. If we're looking at how our lives are lived, even things as simple as the calendar, it's nowhere easily evident to organize time in this manner. This is something that we've inherited from our forefathers. This is something that's been ingrained within the culture. It's not a natural truth. And all the interactions that we have between each other, all the different forms of laws and contracts and governments, all this is man-made. These are agreements that have been made thousands of years ago. And so we've inherited an ancient world, even though the technology is interacting with that ancient world in a very confusing way, but the underpinnings of the culture are ancient. And that's the main structure of the life. The process of growing up, the years of schooling to teach this new soul how to interact with the society at hand, and then marriage, the way that the life plays out, the way the children are raised, all this has been evolving, but the underpinnings of it are ancient. And so we face a dilemma, we face a situation where we're doing things, but we don't know what we're doing. We're living things, we don't know what we're living. We're being things, we don't know what we're being or how to be it. A light shines beyond all the others to reveal the nature of this mystery, to reveal the underpinnings of this ancient culture and the reason why we are living the way that we are. Why are we interacting with reality in this strange way? How did we come to be here? This light is the light of the Zohar. Zohar means shining. This is the light of Reb Shimon. It's a light that reveals the meaning behind the rituals, the ideals behind the ideas, the intentions behind the actions. And so there is revealed the soul of the thing itself. The thing that we all know, the thing that shaped the world, the Torah that was given on Har Sinai has been shaping the world for thousands of years. And within the Zohar is the soul of the Torah. What does it mean? What does it want? What's the intention of it? Why? Why would you do that to an already confused people? Why give them something that they can't understand? And so the Zohar is speaking to those who are ready to understand. It's a different type of person. A person who is not ready to understand is a person that still wants to be right. He hasn't realized that there's no chance. Nobody grows up being right. It's a matter of how soon can you abandon what you thought for something that's more real. And so when someone is ready, it means that he wants to abandon what he thinks. He knows it's wrong already. He's just looking for the right alternative. And so the Zohar will speak to such a person that is ready to give up what they know, give up what they think, give up what they've tied themselves to, through happenstance, through things that were not that meaningful. But in the experience of a traumatized soul, many things can seem very meaningful because they happen to be the things that everything was dependent on, because everything was so close to the edge in the first place. But when we take a step back, there are things that are really meaningful. There are things that are really worth celebrating if we achieve, if we accomplish. And so the Zohar shines a light on the inner workings, on the intentions, on the real meaning of things. And when the soul wants to change, then it can see that everything that it thought was not real. Everything that it thought was just a misconception, because the experience was not what it should have been. The experience wasn't pleasing to the soul. And so the soul was pushing back by not cooperating with what's taking place. If we find a way to align ourselves with the real intention of life, that's when the soul really returns. That's when she becomes available. That's what it means when the pasuk says, Toras Hashem tmima, meshivas nafesh. The Torah returns the soul. It brings it back from the exile where it didn't want to be. And so the essence of the teachings, or the essence of what the Torah is trying to reveal, is what is the nature of this soul to the extent that we can relate to it. Because obviously the soul is bigger than the mind that it creates. So the mind cannot understand the soul, it cannot contain. But to the extent possible, how far can we reach into understanding what we're interacting with and how to please it? What does it really want? What's going to really make it happy? And so this is related to knowing the name. Knowing the name of the Creator means to know how does nature interact with the force that's creating it. What's the relationship? When does the force release more of itself, and when does the force restrict itself? What brings more shefa and what brings less shefa within nature? And so it's like the name of the Creator, meaning if you can get more shefa at will, it's like you know the name of the Creator. You're calling Him and He's giving you more. But if you don't know who to call, then you can't get more. This is the difference between knowing the name and not knowing the name. And so knowing the name has to do with knowing the soul, knowing the individual soul, which was created with the image and the form of the collective soul, the greater soul, the source. And so within this source, within this root of life, the world has been interacting with it in a way that has two sides. There are two different moods, two different modes of interaction, where there's the good that we do, the good that we invest and we reap good, And then there's the bad, the frustrated, the angry that we invest and we reap bad. And so this means that we're living in a conditional world, in a world where the spiritual shefa, which is called life, the life force as we receive it, is being received conditionally. It's being received based on certain criteria. There isn't an unconditional release, regardless of what's taking place. There's a conditional release based on the situation, based on the circumstances, based on many different factors. The life force gets released. So this is what the world is used to. Before the Mabul, for example, the world was in a different state. Then the Shefa was unconditional. They would receive life without any conditions. They would still receive the perfect flow of life. And so therefore, they could use that life force in ways that are against the will of the Creator, and still their life force wouldn't be restricted. They would still receive their full portion. This interaction, this type of release of Shefa, is called Atika Kadisha, the ancient Holy One. The ancient Holy One is the one that was before the interaction of Schar v'Oinish came in to this world. And so before the Mabul, where people weren't feeling the consequences of what's taking place, they were receiving life unconditionally. They took that to a very far place where they really destroyed the ability of living here. And so now we live in a conditional space where we can't go too far from where humans are supposed to be and how they're supposed to behave, because if we do, we start feeling the consequences immediately. It becomes really difficult to live here. And then, as a result, we start looking for how to change. We start finding a truth that's more suitable to the soul. And so the ancient Holy One is the release of life unconditionally, and Ze'er Ampin, which is the smaller phase, meaning that there's less patience with how we interact, is what we are interacting with. We call Ze'er Ampin HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is what represents that if we do good, if we get it right, then we have access to the ultimate good. And if we get it wrong, that delays our access to the ultimate good. Atika Kadisha means there's always access to the ultimate good. There are no conditions. And so, in order to be meyachad the yichud of the soul, in order for the soul to be able to unite to its source, it needs to realize that both of these modes are the same one. It's not that there are two different ones that you're interacting with. There's one, and this one, part of its intelligence, in order to know how to interact with life perfectly in all conditions, in all situations, is that it can choose between these two modes, but it's the same one that's interacting. And so that's what he says here. This is in the Idra, in Parshas Nosoi. Klola dechol milin, atika da atikin, ezei rampin kol echad. Atika Kadisha, where life is completely unconditional and the flow is coming without any restrictions, is the same one as the one that's restricting based on certain conditions. Kol ahava, kol ahavei, kol yehei, lo yishtana v'lo mishtana v'lo yishno. It all was, it all is, and it all will be. It hasn't changed, it isn't changing, and it won't change. There's only the one that interacts with all things. That can never change. How he interacts, that's based on the intelligence of what's best for the creature that he's interacting with. And so when the creature was in a certain level of intelligence, then the interaction was at that level. The creature goes to a different state, and then the creature finds a different interaction. It's all based on how developed is the vessel that's interacting. Istaken betikin and Elaine, he formed these improvements for his interaction with us in order to allow us to interact with him appropriately. Ishtlim the yoiknek, the kolel called the yoiknim. Through that, he finished the form that includes all forms, which means that the form of man that we are interacting with, the one that we're trying to become, is at its core all the men that ever were and all the men that ever will be. All humans are trying to be the same one. Each one gets a different angle of him right, gets a different part of him right, of what he really is. But it all comes back to one form, to one prototype of what it means to be a human, and based on that, all of this is coming forth. And based on that, all of it is either aligning with the intention or frustrating the intention. It says, the yoikne, the kolor called the yoikne, the kolor called shmo, and the form that includes all the names. The yoikne, the ischaze begavnoi, the form that can be seen in its colors. Kahai the yoikne, lav hai the yoikne hava, ele ke'en hai the yoikne. That there is a concept of what a human being is, and based on that concept, all of creation came forth. And that human that is in that concept is the form of all the worlds. All the worlds are based on that formula, which is the same formula that creates our bodies. The same formula that created our soul, that can dwell within the body. It's the same forces that the body has, which are really the forces of the soul. Like vision is not the force of the body, it's the force of the soul. The body has the vessel in order for the soul to complete its force, its power. And so it needs the eye in order to complete the spiritual vision that the soul has. And so then when there's the physical eye, the spiritual soul can see. But the information as it comes into the world of thought, as we perceive it, that's already spiritual. That's already been transformed, translated into the spiritual realms. That's why we can see it. We can see it in our world where we live, which is not the physical world. Kadis chabron itrin v'kisrin. When the crowns unite, Kedainu ashlemisa dekoda, then there is the perfection of everything. Begin the diikne de odom, because the form of man, hava diikne de ilon v'saton deskeloli bei. He is the form of all the worlds above and all the worlds below that are included in him. Because in perception, we include the worlds of concept, the worlds of intelligence. We include the heavens. And in the body, we include the forms of all of the physical creation. And so through the combination of perception and body, we include all the higher realms and all the lower realms. Everything is represented within the human experience. Begin the high diekne kol alon v'saton, because this form includes the higher worlds and the lower worlds. Asken atike kadishet tekinoi, so the ancient Holy One perfected it so. V'tekine dezei rampim b'hai diekne v'sekina. So these intelligences are in the same form as the creation that comes from them. And these are the ones that are guiding our destiny. These are the ones that are involved in how we're going to get to the place that we need to go to. There's some type of human that's going to come of us. And these intelligences are constantly guiding us. This is why certain things are pleasing to our soul and certain things get rejected by our soul. because from within our soul is getting guidance from the intelligences that are creating it. And so now, as long as we are still in exile, we're still in the conditional phase, where we're not being trusted with the real information. But the Zohar is a source of the real information, which means that through the Zohar, we can leave the form of the soul that judges, and we can get to the form of the soul that releases unconditionally. This is something that the Zohar allows us to do through the wisdom. This is what it means that Reb Shimon says that he can save all of us from judgment. It means that he has the recipe of how to be saved from judgment. And the recipe is not by trying to fulfill every single detail, but it's by changing the attributes that you're interacting with. And so if we go according to the attribute of judgment, it doesn't matter how well you did it, you didn't do it well enough. It doesn't matter how well you intended, you didn't intend well enough. But if we change the attribute that's judging, then everything can go. Everything can be put in the context of kaf zchus. Everything can have the right explanation where it makes sense, where it's justified. And then from that place we can gain, everybody can gain life, everybody can gain favor. Every soul can find redemption. And so this is why the Zohar says that through the power of this Sefer we're going to leave exile. Meaning if people will learn how to liberate themselves from judgment through the wisdom, then that will mean that we're going to leave exile. That will mean that we're going to again learn how to interact directly with Atika Kadisha, with the Ancient Holy One. And then there will be no longer any midas hadin that's trying to hurt humanity. There will be no one against humanity. Even now there is no one against humanity, except that within humanity there is tremendous judgment. And that's a huge enemy. Once we have that, we can't say there's no one against humanity. Oh, there are armies against humanity. Where are those armies? Oh, they dwell within humanity. Within their brains, within their hearts, they're constantly creating judgment. And so that judgment is going to be removed. That judgment is going to change. And then humanity is going to have no enemies. And so when humanity has no enemies, that's when we gain favor, we gain access to the light of Atika Kadisha. That's going to be represented by Mashiach. And through Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, through the Zohar, this paves the way for Mashiach that should be revealed soon, within our times.